Artistically, I think it's very simple album cover, but it's probably one of my most artistically inclined album covers that I've done. And I feel like art usually tends to be like that, but it's like really simple. It's like very like has so much meaning to it. It's like it's a yellow border. You have that picture of the wheat in the middle, and there's a white little border around it. It just looks very visually appealing. I thought you have the contrast from the yellow into that deep blue. It looks like a window, and there's that little bit of depth in there from that white border on the inside. I feel like it draws you in. I just like every time I look at it, I'm just like I find myself analyzing it. Although it's such a simple cover, you have the picture of the wheat, and it seems framed. You know that the wheat goes beyond that, and to me, that's what this album is. You're seeing a relationship, but you're not seeing the full thing, and you can't because you're only getting one side of the story. You know, one perspective. But I just really liked how that was. It's like someone saying you like, my relationship sucked, and here it is, and they're not showing you all of this, and that's the album cover. The actual like picture itself, the context of the picture is it's wheat, right? And you have some growing this way and some growing that way, and to me that's just kind of like that's the being like single part. Like how do I find my matching wheat in all this wheat? Because it looks like it goes on for a long time, and there's some sticking right out, right, and stuff like that. So that was the context there for me. It looked to me the visual representation of how do I find a relationship. This one's one of my top 5. Collaboration. I do really like the way this came out. I've had this riff for the longest time. Before Music of Simpler Times, I've had that guitar riff, had no way of implementing it, couldn't figure it out. And then this album, I sat down, I'm like, I'm using it. I really like it. I'm using it. It sounds very similar to Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. And when I made it, that was kind of the thing. But I put my own little flair onto it. But I really liked it. And I was like, perfect. And it sounds angry, right? I've been feeling, like I said, it's very like, it's sad. It's like, I'm feeling sad. But now... So they sat down, had the conversation that I've been feeling, and collaborations right after that. And it does not seem to have gone good. It's very angry and very, you did this, I'm this. Like, it's basically someone talking down to someone else. Like, I'm feeling like a saint now and stuff like that. And I had really fun writing this song because it was just like, I got to be very creative and stuff like that. But the instrumental to me seems to reflect that. Like, the guitar sounds like angry, you know what I mean? Not like... overly, but just a little bit.
Nah, yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like you're stomping your feet when you're 5.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I had a lot of fun doing this. There's no drums on it. With this album, I really decided to get creative with the percussion. I was like, does this song need drums? Once again, does it need it, or am I just adding it just to add it? I decided not to add drums here, but to go with, like, more non-traditional percussion. Yeah, a hand drum, which is actually... just me smacking the back of my guitar. I have a hand drum, but I didn't like the way that it sounded. And I was like, how else can I get this? And I was sitting there.
I saw him do it.
Sounds really good, doesn't it? It sounds so good.
Yeah.
And mic'd up, you don't even notice that it's not a hand drum. But, you know, this goes out to the indie musicians out there. If you want that sound and you don't have it, like, and you have a guitar, it doesn't even matter. And I have 2 guitars of different sizes, and obviously they give you different tones. And even where you... smack on the guitar gives you different timbres and stuff. But yeah, I was like, I wanted to add that in there. And then the shakers on it, there's like little shakers in the ear going. Those are sugar packets. I didn't want to spend money
They're
on...
right there. If you want to take a look, they're legit right behind you. On the shelf.
I didn't want to spend money on something that I didn't have to, so I used sugar packets.
Shout out to Trivia.
And they work so well.
Is that what they're called? Trivia?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's just throw it
They
in.
work so...
Trivia. Yeah.
I used 3 of them in my hand just to get that little bit of, dynamics in there, but they sounded so well. So all the percussion you hear, except for the tambourine, is just like me DIYing it, and I thought it came out really well, though.
I still think it's really funny because I saw the live.
Yeah,
and it was like 20 minutes of
smacking my guitar. That was actually recording the hand drums for Hello Love. You could hear it in there. That was recording that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun recording collaboration. And then that part at the end, so you have the very angry, it's your fault, and this is where they finally break up, at the very end of collaboration. And then it's like, I feel like we've all been in the fights. Like, you get into a fight, you say something, and you're like, that was so stupid and childish of me. Like, almost immediately after, you're like, why did I do that? And that's what the ending of that is. It's the very, like, just a guitar strumming. Exactly. and then it's abruptly cut. So now they broke up. And the relationship seems like it's over, but there's still a lot of album left to go through. Kind of the sleeper track, I think, on this album.
Really?
It's really good. No, it's really good, but people don't, like, gravitate towards it, in my opinion.
That's fair.
I really like it. I like the way it came out. This one is very revealing. It's very, like, I messed up. I'm still messed up. I have stuff that I need to work through. I'm not saying that we should get back together. I'm just saying I need to say this stuff. The truth is, right? I just need to get this stuff off my chest. I had it in that little... I had that, like, studio take. I'm like, everything just sounds funny with the reverb.
I think that was a great way
There's
to start
no
song.
artistic way for me to explain keeping that in the track other than it just sounded good, and I really just wanted to start the song like that. But, yeah, it's just that little bit of funny, then back to, okay, this is serious. And this song just... Not a lot of song structure. It just progresses towards this, like, ultimate final thing. And this was a song where it's like, I really love the demo of this. It's just in the demo, it just wasn't there. And I like the sound of the demo, and re-recording it, I didn't get quite that sound again. But nonetheless, I really like the track. The vocal just flare up at the end there. And once again, it's just a very revealing track. It's a shorter track. I do like it and how simple it is. I love that just the timbre of the guitar throughout the whole thing.
I think personally, I think it's my favorite track on the album, mainly because of I think this is the most, like, raw way that you're using your voice, and I think it hits. It sounds like it's a more personal hit, you know what I mean, than previous songs.
Yeah,
you know
you could tell straight from the beginning. You're like,
I think it's a powerful song in reference to others. Going into the next song, which I think. The truth is, into the next song is like the best way to do anything.
We're getting into, like, my favorite, like, run in the album.
Yeah.
Go into the title track, like, top two from the album. I really, really like this one. It started with that intro riff that you hear, but it starts with the... Sorry. Restart this. We'll cut this. Obviously, it sounds a lot more... Yeah, it sounds a lot more powerful on the electric guitar, I think. And I love that fade in. I'm not a huge fan of fade in or fade outs.
Neither am I.
But they have their place, and I think this is one of them. It's just everything just comes in really nice. And this riff, besides, like, collaboration, was the first thing that I have that I was like, it's gonna be on this album that I'm creating. I don't know what the album is yet, but it's gonna be this. And then from that riff, I'm just playing around, and the lyrics just started to come out like, "Oh, lover," and I was like, I'm like, that's like a cool, like, saying. I'm like, I don't know what made me go super retro with that, but I was like, I really like the way it came out, and I was like, I'll name the song that, but I want to name it in a way where the title looks like someone saying it to another person. So I have comma, lover, exclamation point. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that kind of lended itself to naming the album, going with, like, lover's not gendered, right? So I was just like, kind of a cool way to name this album, very tight, you know, exclaiming it. And I feel like from that title, you could be like, I kind of have an idea what this album is about. But this was a fun conceptual song to do. It's now, so they broke up. I said what I had to say, but I'm still hurt, you know, and I still love this person that is not with me, doesn't want to be with me anymore. And it's, so you have that beginning part where it's very telling, right? Oh, lover, even when the sun won't shine, you'll still have my loving. Very poetic in that way. It's probably my most poetic thing on the album. Not to pat my own back, but it is. I like its poeticness in that way. And all coming from that one riff. And then, this is where it gets really, really... I love the story of this because it's some guy sitting.
Every time he says love in here, I'm gonna put Vine Boom in.
It's some person sitting in their home just thinking about, like, I kind of messed up. I still really like this person. So what do? They have a drink, and this is where that soda pop sound comes in again.
Oh, when you said it in Black Cherry, I was thinking of this. I was like, wait, it's in this
I
song?
really love that. It goes from, like, this riff into, like, the pop open, they're taking a drink into the, like, love that part. So they're drinking and they're drunk, and now they're just spouting all this stuff over the, you know, one of my favorite instrumentals too. I love the beginning and I love the. I just really like the way that came out. It felt like drunk-ish to me, you know. It was like easy to play and it was just kind of embellishing. This was one of the things. I had the beginning of the song and I had the end of the song, the piano part, and I was like, I had no way to connect them once again. I was originally just gonna do the opening riff, like the whole time, and I was like, got kind of boring. Came up with this new idea. I'm like, he's gonna get drunk somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, let's put something in his drink.
But I really like it, and the lyrics, if you listen to the parts, sound like a drunk person just kind of spewing nonsense. Oh, lover, I need your love any time of day. And it's just like. This doesn't sound like the beginning part at all. It's like something, you're saying the same stuff, but you're saying it very differently. And like I said, it's supposed to represent them getting drunk. But going back to the instrumental, one of the later things that I made for the album, once again, I was like, I wanted a triple meter track that was a rock song. Now, as I mentioned before, triple meters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 instead of the traditional 1, 2, 3, 4. And I learned, I was like, don't force it. I'm like, I do kind of want it, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And some of the songs are triple meter, but I wanted like a rock triple meter. And then I just started doing this because of the chords from the beginning part. And that's in triple meter, and I was like, hey, there we go, it fits. Really like the progression where it just, and then back into it. And then kind of goes a little bit off the rails. I don't like slur my speech, but I say stuff that doesn't make sense towards the end. I get more offbeat once again just to like lean into the fact that this person's drunk now. And then they do what no one should do right at the end. They have another drink and they decide I'm going to call this person and tell them how I feel while I'm drunk. And I referenced that in the piano part of the song. I've had a couple bottles, but it's clearly not enough.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's such a great, as I said, narrative like song structure. Like they miss this person, they drink, they're drunk, and they're like, I'm gonna call this person and tell them how I feel. And that piano part is supposed to represent them dialing, and then they call, and it's just like, it's like kind of like cringy almost. And it's just like, I miss you and no one else is be good for you, but all the time they're drunk. And then at the very end, it's like, I need to get them back. And then that happier piano part plays with the horns and everything like that. That was a nightmare to get done, the horn section.
I remember we had one guy do it.
Yeah.
This guy was hot garbage.
Didn't like the way it came out, so I had to do it again. Got a take. I was like, this sounds good enough, but we have that now. But that's what the song is about. I missed them. I got drunk. I left them a voicemail. In my head, this is what I'm thinking. You didn't actually call them. You just left a drunk voicemail. And it's kind of like you hung up and you're like, get more sober. And it's just like, I really need to get them back. So they do. And in this, I haven't really described how much time has passed since them breaking up and this, but it is quite some time. This is not a continuous, story. A lot of time has passed. And that brings you into the wedding. Which is the wedding of the other person whose side we have not heard throughout this album. And it's I've said it before to you joking around, but I've always wanted to go to a wedding and be that person that's
Dude,
like,
honestly though?
I object. Like, I see it in the movies all the time. I've never been to a wedding where it's happened, and I'm like, I just want to do it one time. Just not to actually do anything. I just want to do it like, I object, and everyone looks at me, and I'm like, just kidding. Go back. Like, I just want to do it. Yeah, I just want to. I just want to do it one time. But that's kind of what this song is. It starts off with that same melody from Wildflower. Same melody, just up a few keys, right?
Yeah.
And it starts dun, 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 dun. Once again, triple meter. And then it goes into the dun, 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 dun. And to me, that was representing like going to a wedding and kind of like the reception. Let's be clear here, not the boring part. And it's like you walk in and there's dinner music playing, right? It's not really like you can't dance to it. It's just music they play for everyone to get their cue cards and start eating and stuff like that. And it was like fast paced, I thought that was kind of cool. And then it slows down, and it's like in my head, this person finds that person who's now, they are married.
Mm-hmm.
They have gotten married, but they're still like, I need to tell you how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And the song is about them saying, I think you should leave this wedding and come with me. It's very point blank about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the lyric says, but it's someone talking to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do really like it. It is one of my more favorite songs on the album. I love that, like, so it's saying it's, what a beautiful wedding. I wish it was mine. It's kind of like, all right, where are you going with this? And then when the person finally says, like, I think you should leave, you get that pause. And you have that kind of build up, which is probably my favorite section of the album.
I agree with that. Every
like,
time
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, where are we going here? And what that is like you tell this person, like, leave your wedding. And obviously they're just going to kind of be, like, stunned. And it's waiting for that response, which could, in reality, take, like, a millisecond. But to you, it feels like the whole time of the universe is passing by. Because you're just waiting for this question to be answered. But I just love that part. It was very thought out. And very well done on my part. And then it's broken by that ding, that F chord again, which I said is the key of the album. And is the person really saying, like, they don't know you like I do and stuff like that. Which they have no idea if they do or not. Because you're not creeping on these people's relationship. It's very, like, one-sided there. But anyway, it ends kind of ambiguous. You don't know, did the person leave the wedding or not? And I like when pieces of art do that, like movies or something, they'll leave you questioning. It's kind of open-ended, like, something happened, but you don't know what happened. And this album is one of them. I made it kind of, like, ambiguous at the end. You don't know, did the person leave? Or did, like, leave the wedding? Or did they just, like, say, no, I'm getting married. I just got married. I can't do this. But whether it happens or not, you go to a little ways down the road, which is my only reference to time throughout this whole album, saying, okay, the wedding happened, you asked this person to leave, we don't know what happened yet, but let's see what happens, like, this is, like, the epilogue, this is the last episode, it says,
it sounds like an epilogue
20
too.
years later.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more happier now. And this song, it's about someone talking to their loved one on their deathbed and kind of recounting the good times they had together and just trying to comfort that person in their last moments. And the end of the album is that person dying. But these people are much older, like a little ways down the road, very, very far away. But the person does. But the album is told from the perspective of not the person who died, the person who's lived from that. But I thought I had a lot of fun making it. Has a happier feel, has an end of the road feel to it, like this is the end of the album. Person ends up dying, sorry. But the song itself is still left up to interpretation, because is it did we get back together after the wedding and you left them for me, or did I just move on and find someone new? I made the album like that. You were following the story of these two people for so long, but it's like in the end it could have been they're just not meant for each other. Or flip side, you could see it as they were meant for each other and they did get together and they lived a happy life until obviously death has to happen. And you have that at the very end, the death motif. It's the same motif from Collaboration. And in Collaboration, it represented more, you're gone, I miss you, I messed up. And here it's, you're gone. It's not my fault, though. It's inevitable. I'll still miss you, but you're gone. And the motif means the same thing, you're gone, but it's expressed differently. And it even just sounds different. It's more like somber and stuff like that. I think it's my favorite solo of the album, maybe excluding Black Cherry, but I do think it just fits so well. And it was just a very happy way to end this album. But like I said, it is open for interpretation. There was two songs in particular that were like gonna be on the album, and I was like, I just can't have it be like 18 songs long. I'm like, it would have just been once again, I would have just been making it long just to make it long. But they will find their way into some project somewhere, because they are good songs. There wasn't too much that I made like all the way through and was like, it's not going on the album. Usually when I said I needed to like use my time effectively and be like, okay, this is going on the album, so I need to work on this before starting something new, at least finish it. And then I could officially decide, is it going? But most of the stuff went on the album.
What do you feel like you learned from making, whether it's physically in the studio or just making the songs and putting them on the album? You know what I mean? Like, what did you learn from the whole experience?
As mentioned before, I really learned that I need to put my ego aside. And I need to say, don't force this on the album. Let songs develop organically and really look at your stuff at face value. You know, if you have a song that's 12 minutes long and you're like, but I just love it and it goes on for 12 minutes and it has to because I need to get all this out. Really sit down and be like, does it have to be 12 minutes long? Are you actually enjoying this all the way through? Mm-hmm. Are you just making it 12 minutes just so you could say, I have a 12-minute song? Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like some songs do that. Not on my album, but on previous things. I geared this album to not do that.
So what have you learned? Like, where do you stand in terms of mixing? Like, what did you do prior and what do you do now in terms of actual song?
I've found that when creating any art, you have to strip it down to basics and build off of that. And the basic of any art is, what do you like and why do you like it? You could talk all philosophy. It's creating art, right? Forget what feeling is it invoke, what feeling you're trying to invoke. Forget that. That's secondary, right? No artist sits at a canvas like, I want people to feel mad today. Let me paint mad. That's not how it works, right? Sit down, figure out what you like and why you like that. Not general. Get as specific as you can. Start off general maybe and then get specific. Me, as I mentioned before, I like change in song structure. So I implemented that into the album. Very clear, very different from my previous albums where stuff didn't change too much. You have 3 basic tools in mixing that get overlooked so much. You have stereo space. That is essentially how left or how right do I want a track. But now we're getting into such new technology where you could go front and back too. We haven't really reached the up and down axis of song mixing. But one thing that I really took to heart with this album mixing is stereo space. And I love a good stereo space on a song. I love when you listen to a song and you're like, this sounds like it's in like a room. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't sound like they're recording it through a computer. It sounds like I'm in a room and they're there. And to me, one that does stand out is I've Been Feeling. That beginning, I just love that stereo space that is developed in there. It just sounds so natural. And some of the things that I did with that was having 2 mics on something, having 2 mics on a guitar, different mics. One's a condenser, one's a dynamic, and panning one left, panning one right. Now, the physics of a headphone, if I have the same sound left and right, that's coming out dead center. That's how a headphone works. There is no center thing attached to the back of your head, you know? You're hearing it left and right. So if you play the same sound left and right, if you're amateur audio engineer, you'll know it's dead center. But if you have 2 different mics picking up slightly different versions of that, it will not be dead center. You'll hear it more towards one side, more towards the other, but you get such a unique room or stereo space from that. And I just love it. I did that a lot on the album. I never had 1 mic on my guitar or anything like that. Definitely not the piano, right? But another way that I did control that, whereas if, like, let's say I had 1 vocal take or something like that, like on Open Road, the vocal is here, but you hear like a little bit of it, like right here and right there. And the way I did that was I added a vocal delay on it. That's a echo effect, kind of. But I set it so it's only 1 echo, and it's very, very close to that original sound. And all it does, and I have the timing kind of randomized. I just picked random settings, and it makes it here now, but it also makes it here. You control your song. Every other thing from a song, every other effect, every other this is a mixture of these. Of stereo space, as I mentioned, where is the sound coming from? And as I said, you get really articulate that now with like Dolby Atmosphere and 7.1, 5.1 surround sound. You get very technical of where the sound is coming from, even behind you. You also have your frequency spectrum. The human ear can hear from about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, but you have to use this. So like there's big debates in the audio engineering world. What do I record? Do I record so I could hear all the frequencies, even the ones we can't hear? Or do I record so I can only hear the ones we can hear? While there is studies into called infrasound, sound that we cannot hear, but does have psychological effects. And that's you have to be careful with that. Because sound is sound. It will be present in your mix whether you could hear it or not.
Sound is sound, that's true.
No, no, because if we can't hear something, you kind of think, okay, it's not a sound. It still is, you're just not able to hear it, right? It's outside your frequency spectrum. Your headphones will still play that, right? It will still muddy up your mix regardless. So you have to be careful with that, but really take to use of it. One thing I've been told about my mixes is they sound natural. They sound more raw and they don't sound processed, but they still sound good, but like they just sound so natural. Like you sound like this guitar is a guitar and someone's playing it in a room with me. And one thing that I attribute to that is me not messing with the frequency spectrum too much. I've seen a lot of engineers and producers be like, all right, here's the vocal, and I'm going to trim it out so this is the frequencies you're hearing. Like, and while that does work in some mixes, it's you can tell when it's like it sounds unnatural. It sounds like I know this person's speaking into a microphone. You know what I mean? And I know it went through a computer to be recorded. I really widened it out and didn't really touch it that much, the frequency spectrum, with all the instruments. I obviously cut the very highs and the very lows. That's just kind of a rule that you do have to follow. So I'm not surprised by anything. But for the most part, I didn't do what's called surgical EQ. It was very just general, like fix this annoying frequency that needs to be fixed, do this, but otherwise leave the frequencies how they are, and you get a very full, natural sound. You could tell when a song is mixing something. It's not even so much EQ in terms of frequency spectrum, right? It's more like, in my song, do I want a bass here or do I want the bass there? My guitar, am I going to use my guitar as a bass or am I going to use it more like a twangier sound, you know? It's thinking like that. Like for Bumblebee example, there's no bass. And that was a decision that I decided to make. I'm going to remove this part of the frequency spectrum, and now the song sits all up here. And it sounds like that. It sounds very airy, and that's what I wanted for that song. So you do have to think about that. So that's the second thing. We have stereo space, frequency spectrum, and then we have what's called dynamics. And essentially that is changes over time. And that applies to everything, not just music, right? Something that changes is called dynamic. You have to use dynamics in your songs, and that really applies to everything. It applies to stereo space. It applies to frequency spectrum, but it just applies across your whole song. You need the song to change, right? If you have a sound that didn't change, that's not really music. That's a sound, right? Something, if you're just playing one tone, that's not music, that's a tone, that's a sine wave. Music has to be dynamic by definition, and you should use this to your advantage, right? There's some songs, it's very popular in hip-hop, and I love hip-hop, and I'm not trying to knock it, but they'll play the same loop over and over again, right? And there's some songs where it works well for, but then there's some you're like, it's a little boring. I'm getting a little tired of this. And that, it's very popular in rock too. They're playing the same riff over and over again. But be dynamic, change how the song evolves and stuff like that. Change the volume levels. With mixing, in order to get the very louds, there's a top level of loudness that you could reach. Everyone kind of knows it's 0 decibels. Your mixing starts in the negatives and it goes up. And you could go over that, but what it's saying is that, yeah, you're here, but the speaker's only putting out this much. The speaker it has a max it could put out. Speaker is a diaphragm moving back and forth. There's only so much you could go, that the machines will allow you to go, that Apple will allow you to go, You go all the way up on the volume knob while listening to music. You can't go any louder than that, So you have to think about, where do I want my loudest loud sound to be, and where do I want my quietest sound to be throughout each song. And I find that a lot of audio engineers now are making their stuff unnecessarily quiet. There's a lot of lore in that, and it's a very interesting community to be a part of. But to explain it a little bit, there's these things called the loudness wars that basically took place in the 90s. It's fictitious wars. It's not a real war. It's a terminology. But I just love that they're like, the engineers just needed this like facet of their identity. They're like, the loudness wars. I took part in the loudness wars. Basically what that was, studies being done in the 90s found out that your brain perceives louder sounds as better. And that is true. So what were people doing? Just making their songs louder as loud as you could go. But as I said, your speaker will output a finite amount. You could only go so loud. So most of remastered stuff in the 90s is just louder. And you lose dynamics with that. Because like I said, there's a maximum output. So if everything's past this, then all you're hearing is this the entire time. That's not dynamic. That's the opposite. It's staying the same. So you want peaks and valleys to your songs. But nowadays, because of the loudness wars, people have got it drilled in their heads. Don't go loud. Don't go loud. I can't go loud. So all their songs are sitting here. and they're changing like this. That's the same thing. You're still not dynamic. Everything is here. You need a balance, right? You need the louds, you need the quiets. And a lot. And this is partly due to streaming services, the way they manipulate audio and stuff like that. But people are thinking, I have to mix for this streaming service and this, that. And I used to do that. And I used to be that. And I would mix to their specifications and it was so quiet. And I'm like, I'm losing dynamics. I'm losing bass, right? Because your ears are not really designed to pick up bass frequencies well. So if you quiet it down, you're losing bass, right? And for this album, I stopped that. I was like, mix what sounds good and pay attention to your dynamics. Mix loud, but dynamically. And I do think it's like, to me, I kind of judge it of like, how loud do I need to turn my phone volume up? And it's at the perfect level that I use for professional music, right? I don't need to turn it up or down. A lot of indie music, I'm listening to it and it's so quiet. And I need to turn it up and it's like, I can't. I ran out of volume. You know, and I'm like, it's still not loud enough that I would like it at. Those are the 3 aspects of mixing that are crucial, that every audio engineer, indie musician needs to take advantage of. Mixing and instrumentation-wise. Because dynamics also plays into, you know, am I going to strum hard or am I going to strum soft? Same thing. But that's something that I learned and something I will hold on to and I think everyone should look into. Because I feel like there's some areas lacking nowadays. With that. Do you want me to promo the studio right now?
You can if you want. That's not what I was asking. But
this album, this entire album, recorded, mixed, and mastered inside of our studio. Like I said, I am the house engineer here. I will mix and master your stuff. And it wouldn't have sounded the same if not for the studio. You know, to get these professional sounding recordings and stuff like that. I needed it to make this album. It wasn't like a want. It was a necessity. But yeah, we have a studio right now that could give you.
We cannot give you the studio. You can book it and rent it out if you want.
Professional sounding music.
That's it.
I'm sweating.